to Matic Scale and Customer Success Summit. You're currently attending Scale from an Ops Perspective. I'm Reshma. I'm on our account management team here at Matic, and I'm excited to introduce our speakers and have them answer a quick icebreaker question. I'm going to start with Justin Chappelle, a VP of Customer Experience at 6 Sense.
How are you doing today? So what's the icebreaker question again?
Oh, yes, sorry. What would you like to scale in your personal life?
It's a good one. I think right now, because I've really done a good job of scaling my ability to listen to audiobooks at like 2.5 speed. So I'm like crushing it when I'm at the gym and getting through a ton of content now. I wish I could do that with like video. Like Game of Thrones is getting ready, or the new Game of Thrones is coming out, and I want to like get caught back up. It's gonna take me 6 months to do that if I watch them at normal speed. So I think if there's a way to be able to get caught back up into some video 2.5 speed able to watch, I think it'd be great for my life.
I love it. Keeping up with all the trends. And next we have Melissa Allen, Director of Customer Success Operations at Okta.
Hi, everybody. I love that. So honestly, for me, scaling in my personal life would probably be my calendar. It's almost as much of a pain to like enter stuff into my calendar so that I don't forget what I need to do for my calendar. If there was a way it could just like, I don't know, from my brain to the calendar, and just like the more stuff I get on there, it can be on there. I know that's an absolutely impossible thing, but I think the calendar, my work-life balance is dependent on it. So yeah.
Love it. Next we have Rosa Gandler, Senior Director of Customer Revenue Operations at Greenhouse.
Hey, yes. Thanks for having me. If I could scale one thing, I think it would be household chores. I mean, I'm all for AI writing emails for me. I would love to have a robot clean everything in my sink and keep everything up to date and scale that. So I'd love to join a panel when that's solved.
Next, we have Rosalind Santa Elena, Founder and Chief Revenue Operations Officer at the RevOps Collective.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here. And I think my scale is probably going to be along the lines of Rosa as well, because I immediately went to laundry with a family of 5. It's like laundry. If I could just find a way to be able to do laundry faster or just not do it at all, that would be great.
I totally agree. I'm just doing laundry after a long trip. And we have Twee Pham, Manager of CS Ops and Strategy Systems at LinkedIn.
It's funny that Rosa and Rosalind both say laundry, because that's what I was wanting to scale as well. Because when I think about scaling, it's like, for me, it's like creating habits that make routine, right? So your brain doesn't have to think about it. But a tip I do have is I actually do laundry every other day. I find it more efficient. It doesn't really take as much time as you think it would. So I just repeat it every day, every other day. And the laundry actually never piles up, and it doesn't take all of my Sunday. So that's one cool tip.
Yes. And last but certainly not least, we have Nick Meach, our CEO and co-founder at Matic.
Yeah, I'm +1 or +3, 4 now on laundry. Laundry is the one thing that is the bane of my existence. I do not like to do laundry. So laundry would be the thing that I would love to scale.
Love it. All right. Well, before we start the session, just another reminder to please add any questions that you all have to the chat. Any questions that we don't get to, we'll share with our speakers after the session. We'll post the answers alongside the session recording when it's ready in our resource hub. So I will go ahead and let you all get started.
Awesome. Well, I'll kick things off. Really excited about this panel discussion. Ops is near and dear to my heart. I think it is the glue of customer success, and really excited for the folks that are on the panel today. So to maybe kick things off, I just would love to maybe start with the first question around, what is the role of ops when it comes to helping a team scale, and what are maybe some of the obstacles or misconceptions that you guys have encountered within your roles?
Yeah, I'll jump in first on this one, because I think to me the big misconception, I think when people start talking about especially CS ops, I think RevOps has been around for a lot longer. It's a well defined. There's a go to market strategy associated with it. But on the CS side, I always tend to feel like everybody drifts to this idea that CS ops is like the admin of the CS tech stack. And it's much, much more than that, right? There's, what types of projects are out there? What are the swim lanes? What's the customer journey? Where is CS going to intersect with that? There's all these things that the CS ops team can really help drive towards if given the right tools and resource and funding. And I think that's where I see kind of that CS ops motion being more of like my data decision makers for me, because I need data to make decisions. And being able to get reports readily available from my ops team is really what helps drive some more efficiencies within the organization. So I think the misconception is it's more than just admins. They are really technically trained individuals that have a deeper understanding around our processes, our procedures, and being able to go in and curate that data and bring that out. I think it was interesting this morning, though, just to kind of touch on, John brought it up during your keynote session around like, even if you want to use RevOps as like kind of your go-to because you don't have a CS ops function yet, be prepared that you will get deprioritized. So you have to think about, how can you self-fund CS ops internally? And when you think about the skills of our customer success managers, a lot of them have the technical know-how and the skill sets to analyze reports, make decisions off of that. So you probably have some of those people already on your team. So you don't have to wait for the full official announcement of we now have a CS ops team. There's probably individuals within your organization that can do that for you as you wait to get the funding to be able to build that out at a larger scale. So.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think building on that, Justin, of course, once you get ops, that's great. I do think another misconception we've definitely encountered at Greenhouse is over operationalizing. So, as soon as you're ready to stand up something at scale, like trying to operationalize it. And I think we've fallen into that, especially when I think about like our scaled segment of we have an idea, we have a way to execute it. I think now we've gotten much better at figuring out how to experiment first, then get a sort of more finalized product where we're not putting in all this effort to operationalize before it's like a fully baked result. And that's, I think, helped us be able to like use our resources the right way, as well as remain agile and flexible with our strategy while we're still in the experimentation phase.
Yeah, I want to jump in a little bit on just what Justin said about data and tools, because I think that is a big part of operations. But I also think that, kind of along the same lines is that we forget about the fact that operations is also your business partner, right? It's really that guide, that person to help guide this, help build the strategy, but also help to kind of swivel chair and execute. And I think that's one of the big misconceptions too, is people think about ops in terms of execution, administration, when it's done well and properly, resourced, it can really be that business partner to help guide the business. And CS ops, at least in my experience, has been part of my purview as a RevOps leader. So really owning kind of end-to-end revenue and sort of that customer life cycle that we talk about a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess the next question I'd love to kind of get the group's take on is really around like how and where do you start scaling within CS, right? What are some of the early signs that indicate it's time for ops to get involved and really scale a process or an initiative that's going on within the CS org?
So I can kind of jump in on that. I feel like we're going to be quoting Justin on this one the whole session, but basically, it's to not just be looked at as like admins and the people who are the doers and the ticket takers. You really want your CS ops to be a strategic partner, right? And so it's, in my point of view, it's never too early. As soon as you want to start having those conversations, as soon as you're starting to think about scale or about anything large process wise, you want to bring in that person, that CS ops partner, to say, hey, here's my idea. Help me talk through it. You want to partner in this, right? So having that really great knowledgeable partner, strategic partner, to say, okay, where do you want to end? Like, what's your end result? What's your goal? Let's talk through how to get there, and let's brainstorm potentially on tools and the most efficient way to do it. And do we already have something out there that we can utilize? So pulling them in super early, so you're not spinning your wheels or potentially going down a route that might not work, or honestly, maybe you hadn't thought about something because you had nobody to bounce stuff off of. Before you go down that road, grab that ops person, use them as your strategic partner and have those conversations early, and then talk about like buy-in and making things more efficient, it's going to be such a smoother road ahead.
Yeah, I'll just jump in now. So I agree 100% with Melissa. It's never too early to start scaling and pulling in ops. Early signs for us to determine readiness is basically number one is if there's poor customer visibility, right? So for instance, if you do not have a way to just monitor your customers' progress with your products and your service offerings, or you really just can't proactively monitor your customers' health, I just think these are like the early signs of poor customer visibility. So when this happens, it's really time to start scaling. Another second early sign is if there is inconsistent nurturing of your non-managed accounts. So for example, right, in your delivery post-implementation, if you're just inconsistent, right, just delivering all that to your non-managed accounts, when this happens, these two early signs, it's best to just take the time to step back, map out an end-to-end customer journey, right? And then when you map that out, identify touch points along the way that makes sense to just automate with technology. And also, again, same thing that Justin says, right? Don't forget to strategically partner with your ops team from the very beginning.
Yeah, I would add to that too, because I would agree, right? It's never too early to start. But what I've seen in previous organizations prior to coming to Sixth Sense, there's teams that are already out there engaging with your customers, right? So everybody owns the customer at a company, right? It's not like just the customer success team is doing these outreach, these touch points. And, we identified, we ran a campaign one time and said, let's look at all of the touch points or all of the contact that we're making with our customers, whether it's marketing, CS, support, at a product release. How many times are we reaching out to our customers and trying to engage with them? And we came back with, on average, directors or plus would actually have 7 to 10 emails from our company on a weekly basis. That we have to figure out how do we protect our customer from that. And that's where I think operations can come in, use some data, run some analysis, and kind of step back and go, do we need to send 7 emails this week? Or could we have sent 3? Because the most important 3 need to be prioritized, and those other 4 we can drip later on in the customer life cycle. So I think like when you start to look at the larger who owns the customer, we all do, but we want to be able to control and protect the customer from ourselves. That's where ops can really kind of step in and kind of start to build the parameters and build those swim lanes and the processes to assure that we're driving better experiences for our customers. So I think that's where, I've always seen when you start to see multiple people touching your customer and your customer starting to get confused, you got to step in and kind of help course correct that for them. And ops is a great way to do that.
Yeah, I love what Justin was saying about sort of, I think about RevOps as sort of that holistic view, right? That we talk about a lot, that person that kind of steps back and sees kind of from a customer perspective across the funnel. And I would definitely agree with what everybody's saying in terms of kind of never too early, right? To invest and get ops involved, because as we all know, if you don't have a dedicated ops person, then there's other people on the team who are probably doing ops work, right? And they may not be necessarily the best person to be doing that all the time. And it also takes away from their time to be able to go do the things that they should be doing.
Totally. Yeah, I think one other thing that I'll add that I've learned from my own experience just on indications of when and how is just even talking to the customer success managers who are on the front lines to see like what are the things that you're doing on a repeated basis that could be a potential opportunity for us to scale, right? And being on the front lines and not just talking to the customer, but in our case, ops, our customer is usually the CSM or the AE or whoever we're supporting in terms of stakeholders. So that's a good call out as well. So I guess the next question I'd love to bring up to the group is automation is obviously a big buzzword, right, within the industry right now, with everybody talking about doing more with less and so forth. So how can automation be used effectively, right, to enhance the scalability of customer success ops, right? Like how do you measure the success and ROI of that?
Yeah, I guess I can kind of kick things off, and maybe I'll go take a step back before everyone sort of weighs in around just cautioning people against using too much tech, right? And kind of relying on too much tech, because I think that's another area where I see people jump in too quickly, right? Is, oh, we have this problem, so we need to go buy a piece of technology versus, really understanding what your process is, right? And kind of understanding your underlying processes and policies are, and making sure that you have sort of that governance around what you're trying to do. And then you can bring in tools, right, to help with automation, to drive more efficiency, being just more accurate, and a little bit less of those kind of human touch and manual potentials. But I think everyone else will probably weigh in a lot here on automation.
Yeah, and I'm happy to just kind of add to that before we talk a little bit more about automation. I do think that there's a power, though, of like having to do it yourself first to really make sure what you're going to be automating is the right thing to do. I don't know how many times that we've rolled out something and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, didn't think about that. And then you have to pull back the whole entire thing and start all over again. We're a Matic customer, and, a great example is, we're getting ready to now deliver our QBRs and our EBRs in a more digital automated motion. But the way we deliver an EBR in person is definitely going to be different than how we do it in a digital format. So we need to be able to like send that a few times, test it, A/B test it, make sure it's the right stuff to send. So that way, when we go to actually digitize or scale it out, at that point in time, we've kind of already worked through some of those kinks. And I think it's a trap we all fall into. So I just want to like call it out. It's great to say we're going to go digital, or it's great to say that we're going to build out this automation, but you kind of got to live it first to understand the pain, and then learn from those pain points, and then talk to your customers and make sure it's the right thing, and are you driving those right outcomes? And if you are, then it's the right time to go in and start that automation process.
No, I love that with the whole, make sure you're not over automating, over buying things, and then kind of doing it first before you automate it. The third thing I would add to kind of the be wary on the automation is whether it should actually be automated or not. We've had some conversations on KPIs and how we want to track how many meetings or how many this or that are happening. And we've had asks about automating how to track the meetings, but then you're losing the content of the person who had the meeting inside the part about the meeting. So in all reality, yes, it would be great to just from your head to just automatically, automate these KPIs and these tracking points. But if you lose the whole point of that, then what's the point of the automation? So kind of, and it sounds silly now when I say it out loud, but it was actually asked, can you just automate my touch points with no content? And that doesn't make any sense. So I think sometimes you step back and you say, okay, do we need to buy extra software? Do we need to make sure we're actually doing the right flow before we automate? And does this particular piece need to be automated versus making other things more streamlined, like how they put their notes in, right? Maybe it is from a Zoom call integration and it puts it in for them, but that's a little bit different of an automation than just checking a box and having no content to it. So I think a lot of that is stepping back and thinking through, what do we want to track, but what do we not want to lose, right? And being able to kind of see the difference of those and being smart about how you build those automations. So you're still getting all that content, but reducing maybe the time and effort on the person that's doing it.
I think that's such a good point of not automating for just the sake of automation. And I think the way we've tried to achieve that is by mapping out our customer journey, looking at each thing that the customer actually needs, and then determining how do we deliver that. And to Melissa's point, right, like if it's something that really actually has to be delivered, face to face, or, whatever the case may be, that's not going to be necessarily a point where we automate, but making sure that we're anchored on what the customer actually needs at each point. And I think getting into the ROI piece, one way that we've actually thought about success and ROI, and obviously this is a little bit more like business centric than customer centric, so there's lots of different metrics you would look at, but we have looked at like the efficiency of our team and the amount of revenue each CSM is able to manage over the years. And like, if we're automating those right things of like making jobs faster and easier, ideally that ratio can kind of creep up to a point. And I think we have seen that with a lot of the ops automations.
I'll jump in. Adding to Rosalind's comment about too much tech, I agree. Just like everybody, we should start manually, right? Mapping out the customer journey, even just even before we start thinking about automation. I think it's important to just initially identify every experience the customer have with our product first, whether it's tech touched or managed by a CSM. So this basically creates the customer intimacy story and the relationship from initial engagement, right? Once we have that relationship established, I think that's when automation can be implemented. So for instance, some digital touch points and automations are, automated, auto-generated emails based on systems criteria, auto-generated surveys such as CSAT, NPS, all of that, or like even playbooks just to standardize best practices for, a level playing field across the CS org. These all help scale CS. However, again, don't go too crazy with the tech. Always create that intimacy, customer intimacy story and relationship first. But yeah, to add to the ROI portion, my suggestion is to really like success metrics, just really start small and go slow with identifying these success metrics, right? Clearly define them and actually be open to evolving them through time. So basically, our customers are really agile, and we should remain agile and transformative as well when we identify success factors.
Yeah, I would add, I think from a KPI and ROI component of a scaled team, it sort of shifts a little bit. And I feel, and again, maybe because where I work in terms of like a marketing company, but like it's more about the reach and the engagement. So like health scores, I think, change and shift a little bit to be more, focused on, did we reach the right audience? Did they take this? Did the CTA or the call to action that we asked them to do? Did they execute against that? How far is that reach within the organization from a multi-threading perspective? So I think like you start to pick up a little bit more on the marketing KPIs when thinking about your scaled strategy or how you're going to measure success with your customers, because you want to make sure that you're reaching the right customer at the right time with the right information. And that's kind of what CS marketing is really all about. And I think you have to bring some of that into CS to be able to measure the success of your programs.
Totally. Yeah, I think Twee, you mentioned this. I do think that there is something to when you are establishing what are the KPIs for ROI to see whether or not these automations are really working. I think there's also an element of cross-functional alignment on what those KPIs need to be to get buy-in, right? Because we may implement a process to automate something within the CS that I think is going to save time. Another person like, well, it's not saving time. I really care about increasing the book of business for each of our reps, right? So I think having that alignment across the board, I think is a really, really good call out. All right. So my probably one question that I feel like a lot of people are getting today, which is this I don't know if you guys have heard of this new thing called AI. It's something new that's coming out and about, but would love to get you all's take on AI and scaling customer success teams, and maybe what are some concrete examples or tangible examples on how your teams are leveraging AI today?
I can kick us off. AI is like basically the buzzword of this year, right? No one has heard of it. Well, first off, I think AI's role is basically to empower our CSMs to just increase customer value, right? And business efficiency. So in essence, AI basically can automate or eliminate all of those repetitive, tedious tasks for a CSM. So for instance, like tasks like recapping meeting notes or setting out meeting summaries, AI can definitely be leveraged for these types of repetitive tasks that our CSMs are asked to do. Another thing that I think we can leverage AI tools, basically we can leverage them to AI to provide customized recommendations based on past customer interactions with our product, right? So at LinkedIn, we use that where we just, it studies how our customer interacts with our product. And then we send out customized, personalized emails, or newsletters. Another way at LinkedIn, how we leverage AI is that it can actually generate data-driven insights and provide proactive solutions to our customers' problems as well. But anyway, those are good examples of how we can leverage AI, but it all sounds wonderful, but like all good things, we need to practice with responsibility and implement in moderation when we do leverage AI. And there should always be a balance of human touch and AI. But that's just how LinkedIn does it.
Yeah, I would plus one to pretty much all of that. It's such a powerful tool, but you also want to be smart about it, just like with, you know, any other tool, right? And you don't want to get it with the recommendation or the source of actually replacing anything, right? It definitely needs to make the goal, I feel like, when we're looking at CS is optimizing CSM's time, and making their life a little bit easier so they can focus on the relationship with the customer and the business value. So things like she was saying, basically like meeting notes and summarizing things like that, and maybe even suggestions, but there's still suggestions that the CSM is going to look over, analyze, and then talk to the customer about. So using it as this wonderful tool to aid, but not replace in any means or shape. But also just being careful. You don't want to, oh, AI is amazing, let's just implement it everywhere, right? You want to be smart about it and go, well, where are we spending our most time? Where could we save time? Oh, potentially meeting, like the whole, you know, automating notes so you're actually focused on a conversation in a meeting and you're not like, well, hold on, let me make sure I'm tracking all this stuff down, and then you forget or you don't remember what their primary goal is because you were trying to write notes at the same time as they were talking. Having something like AI that can actually remind you of those things so you are fully in with that customer, not only does it increase your relationship with that customer because you are on it, right? You are with them the whole time, but then you can really summarize that conversation in a really meaningful way. And then you actually have really great notes of what their business goals are. So utilizing it in that kind of form versus having it come up with recommendations and send without buy-in from the CSM. So just being smart about using it in the right ways and shapes and form. And then, I mean, at Okta, we have a lot of really good ideas of how we want to do it, but we're kind of slow rolling it. We just want to be really careful and mindful of how we're pulling it in. But things like summarizing meeting notes and potentially automating kind of the summary of what's happening and the goals for those customers, those are definitely top of mind. But we just a little paranoid about security, so we definitely want to make sure that we're tracking things before we completely roll things out. But yeah, there's so many avenues. Just, I would say, take it slow and make sure it's really bringing value and meaningfulness to the company.
I love that example too of like not just time saving, but also the like allowing a CSM to be present because it's doing some of that more administrative work for a team. And I think the main thing we focus on is like, I remain pretty skeptical of AI use cases where they're going to make decisions for our team or drive strategy versus time saving. I love that, like the more of the admin work on the backside.
Oh, I think, Rosalind, I think you're on mute. Oh, nope. Gotta love tech sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Try it
Sure.
through, guys. Forget about the fancy microphones. Just use the corded headphones. But anyway, so I was just saying that, you know, I like what Rosa was saying about it. It's not, AI is probably not going to make decisions for us, but it can probably bubble up the right insights for us to look at, right, and make those decisions. So I look at AI kind of, at least from an ops perspective, as really being able to do those deep insights, right, that maybe we just don't have time to do, kind of along the theme of time savings, that may take us hours and hours to do, or it's things that, you know, we just can't even think of doing. Like we don't even know what to be looking at, and they can have some of that pattern recognition and pick up some of the things that just to shine a light on what we should be looking at.
Awesome. Yeah, I think obviously AI is everywhere. So I do feel like it's all consuming, especially on LinkedIn and social all around. I feel like it is definitely starting to weave into all aspects of life. So I guess last question I'd love to pose to you all is, you know, how do we better get CS leaders to incorporate ops when it comes to their scale strategy, right? So, you know, what are some things that you guys are doing? And specifically, what are some of the KPIs and metrics that are most indicative of success when scaling a CS team?
So I can kind of hop in. I think the goal of someone in ops is that we just become part of the extended team and that we're having regular conversations. Excuse me. Having regular conversations. We're in their staff meetings. You know, we're a part of all those conversations. So it's not that they have to like pull us in, but that we're just always there, like being that strategic partner, being an extended part of their team and listening to like their needs, and hopefully being able to bring really great ideas to help scale and help collaborate. So that would kind of be my, you know, as an ops person, my hope that would be the way the relationship is, because you want that great relationship. You want to be a part of that. As far as KPIs and metrics, I mean, I really think this totally varies per company. It's like, what needle do you want to move, right? And you kind of, again, it's all about like starting small and figuring out what needles do I want to move for this team, and being able to pinpoint that and track that. If it's health, what about the health do you want to change? How do we want to scale that and see of the people we've reached out to? Do we do it in a pooled model? Do we do it through automation, or do we do in a combination of, you know, Maddox snapshots pushed to our success hub, you know, and being able to track how many opens, how many people are getting value out of this. So I think each company has to kind of say, what's my first needle and how do I want to move it? And then you track it like that.
Yeah, I think I would maybe just to add. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good.
Yep.
I'm on the wired one. I think, you know, building that rapport, I think with building that relationship is obviously very important, right? But how do you do that, right? Is you really need to understand the business and understand the customer really better than anyone else. And then you can become that strategic advisor, right, to your CS leaders, because the more you know about the business, understanding what's happening with the customer, you know, you're involved in the day-to-day, you have all of the data available to you. So who better to really be that person to kind of bubble up the, you know, what are you seeing in the business? What's working, what's not, where do we need to, you know, lean in, and where do we need to sort of pivot? So I think that's super important. In terms of kind of KPIs, I guess, for me, from a RevOps perspective, I think we always need to be tied to the business, right? So if I'm a RevOps leader, I like to be tied to our CRO's number. If you're a CS ops person, being tied to those KPIs and objectives that your CS leader is tied to, right? Whether that's, you know, net dollar retention, you know, net revenue retention, whether it's, you know, different types of churn metrics, whether it's expansion numbers, whatever those numbers are, I think it's really important that we're tied to that, because everything that you're doing day to day, whether it's short-term or long-term projects or initiatives, should be ultimately driving better revenue outcomes, right? And better customer experience.
I guess a follow-up question to that, I think usually the ratio between obviously frontline CS and ops is, you know, a lot different, right? There's a much smaller team that supports a much bigger team, right? And I think in today's macroeconomic climate where resources aren't as abundant, right? And people are having to make trade-offs, you know, how do folks that are leaders on the ops side, how are they, you know, any suggestions that you all have on how to make the case to say, hey, we need to continue to invest in ops, right? Especially in times like this. Anybody have any thoughts there?
Yep. I'm happy to maybe jump in a little bit here, and then would love to hear what other people think. But I think, you know, one of the things I tell ops leaders a lot is that one thing that we're not good at a lot of times, because we're great at supporting the business and, you know, enabling, and we're natural helpers, right? We want to help other people and see them succeed. And so I think one of the mistakes that operations folks do or make is not talking about their value enough, right? The impact that they're bringing. So if there's nothing anyone takes away from anything that I've said, I would say if you're an ops person out there, is making sure that you are communicating the value and the impact that you're bringing to the business every day, right? Tie it back to your go-to-market strategy, tie it back to your CS leaders' objectives, and help them understand what you're doing, how it's helping to move the needle and achieve that. And, you know, a lot of us don't like to kind of toot our own horn. We don't want to be out there in front of people, but in the spirit of alignment and communication is being able to kind of, in the spirit of communication, being able to tell the organization what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we're moving the needle.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's really hard because you don't want to say no when you want to help the business, and you don't want something to break simply to show that you don't have enough resources to do it. So a lot of ops people work more than they probably should and work on the weekends because we're natural helpers. We don't want something to break just because we didn't have time to do it. That said, at Okta, we have quarterly roadmaps and annual roadmaps, and we share it with the leadership and we talk through it. So what we try to do is not only do we try to show like, hey, this is the value we added this year, we also sometimes have to say, just so you know, we actually couldn't do XYZ because through the roadmap, you know, if you wanted something done and we had to take something off, it kind of goes into this bucket of we were unable to do it due to resource constraints if you get to that point, right? So being able to kind of track that on what, like I said, what we do is a quarterly basis and kind of keep it in our back pocket of things that we honestly just couldn't do. Then we, at the end of the year, if we are hoping for more headcount, we can say, look at this awesome, amazing value we brought you. Look at the stuff that we honestly couldn't. And can you imagine if we had had one more person and we could have done all of this stuff and we could have potentially helped increase revenue or retention or, you know, and really speak to those business metrics about the value add. So I think for us, the key is having that roadmap and that really clear visibility on a quarterly basis of what we're able to do. So we can also say what we can't do. And that sometimes gives us a little bit more visibility in that manner.
Melissa, I feel like you should be in sales. You just sold me. I'm going to give you all the resources that you need. Awesome. Any other final thoughts on that before we turn it over to Q&A? Awesome. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you all. Really do appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion today. Reshma, I'll turn it over to you to ask any questions from the audience, if there are any, for the panelists.
Yeah, there were a couple of questions that came up around how you all have used AI at your companies aside from kind of just those recaps and meeting notes. So curious how you all have leveraged different tools and have some of those tools worked, or how you all decided which ones to kind of keep in your tech stack.
I can share. It's not really ops related, but it is AI driven, and I think it is living in the idea of creating consistent experiences for our customers, and it's more around like our learning services and the content that we produce to enable the customer to leverage our product. We've been looking at a lot of tools that are now focused around like text to speech capabilities to allow, like, so when you think about in-app videos that you might have within your application, anytime that you have to, your product team decides to move a field from the left to the right, which happens all the time, you now have to go back in and change all of these videos. There's some really great tools out there today that can actually do text to speech. And basically you can record all your videos within a matter of a day or two. We can do like 900 or 90 videos in a matter of a week and have our entire in-app video content recreated utilizing an AI tool to do so. So I think that's just another way of driving a better experience for our customers, because they're now also getting the most up-to-date information after the product release across all of the content versus having to wait for us to go in and redo 90 videos, which could take months sometimes.
Another use case we're looking at right now is just around routing customer like incoming requests and things like that using AI around sentiment, around the content of what they're asking to just speed up them getting to the right place in the org, whether that's within CS, within technical support, if there's an escalation. So I'm pretty excited about that use case because I think there's a lot of opportunity for that to be done more efficiently with AI.
I can move on to the next question. How did you all know when it was time to get the first buy-in for a dedicated CS ops hire, and when did you know you needed it?
I could jump in. I think we all know that we needed that yesterday, right? We needed that before we knew we needed it, or before anybody else needed it. I think as soon as, I think the earlier, like we were all saying before, the earlier you invest in operations, whether you have, ideally having a dedicated ops person for customer is when, you have sort of, ratios are different, right? And people always want to know a ratio, like when I get to this number in revenue, or when I get to, this number in headcount, but every business is different, right? So I think it really does depend, but I do think that once you have a CSM or kind of a CSM organization established, it's time to bring in an ops person, right?
I agree with that. I feel like it's just never too early to start CS ops, right? Because we need to support our customers. But from a systems perspective, I just feel that if we start bringing in CS ops from a systems, just to make sure that we capture the customer journey from a systems perspective and make sure automation or whatever, right? That we can use technology along the way in addition to the human component. So a lot of times if you don't bring in systems and then it's after the fact, like, oh, we could have done that or whatever, right? It just makes everything more streamlined if you just bring in ops early from the beginning, be that strategic partner, and just have a merry time together, right? So it's for our customers.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And the fact that whenever I kind of have leadership meetings, I've tried to stress, like, it's good that you guys have a team dedicated to CS, just because things do get reprioritized. And when you have the same team supporting sales as you do CS, sales typically comes first. I mean, it's revenue, right? And it makes sense. But if you don't have a team that can really dedicate to retention and like value add, I mean, it's really hard to get that prioritized. So having this dedicated team, small or large, but having this team that can say your priorities come first and your tooling comes first, and admitting and automating the build out for CS comes first. That's huge. And that also helps the success and helps them grow as well. When you kind of look back and say, when's it time for the next person? I mean, I think as the team grows, like you definitely have to kind of really show what you've done in order to prove that one more of you would be even more amazing and could grow the team even more and increase retention and really increase NPS for your customers because you've been able to support this team. So I think sometimes you do have to have something to start with to show the value that you've already produced, to then really show what you could do if there was another person.
Awesome. How do you all prioritize what to experiment when the purpose of experimenting is to figure out its impact?
I like that question. I really like that question. I'm sure you get all I would love to hear kind of what other folks think. One comment I would just make immediately is that you should always be testing, right? And I think especially, when you think about in marketing, right, you always have sort of that slush fund or that extra little budget that is just for A/B testing, right? Kind of doing some new things. And I think on the customer side or anywhere in revenue, you need to always be trying new things, especially as this market has shown us over the last 4 or 5 years. There's no room for sort of not being surprised, right? There's going to be changes, there's volatility, there's ups and downs. And so with that, I think we always need to be a little bit ahead of the curve by testing out new things.
We do a lot of pilots at Okta. So we have about 400 CSMs, and we have 3 main different regions. And sometimes like our APJ team really want to do something that sounds really unique. So we're like, you know what, we're gonna support you and we're gonna pilot this. And then if it does really, really well, then we'll slowly like increase the range. So being able to be a little bit versatile and be willing to pivot and change and give into kind of some of these whims, not everything, right? But things that make sense that you see can increase the business or grow the business or reduce time or add value add, being able to focus on that and pilot, and then you can test it. If it doesn't work, you just pilot it and you move on, right? So we do a lot of pilotings. That way we can see what works and what doesn't. And we're very good at pivoting if something works or if something doesn't work. So.
Awesome. Well, we're almost right at time. So any questions that we weren't able to get to, we can pass along to our speakers here and share this along with our session recording. And everyone will be notified when these are live and good to go. Thank you all again for joining, and thank you all to our wonderful speakers for having this amazing conversation with us today. We appreciate it and hope to see you on some future sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye.